middle of the day, and it is Tuesday, I'm pretty sure, and I am glad to be broadcasting. It's probably a better term, I guess a more 21st century term than broadcasting these days, but um, glad to be connected to whoever is out there watching live, and those people who will watch this as a video. Happy noon. That's a good way to put it. Someone just typed in happy noon in the comments. So start of a new chapter of the day, and that we kind of impose that time on nature, and so I guess we come up with ways to mark that time. What's the difference between now, just after noon, and a few minutes ago when it was before noon? Maybe you eat lunch, take a break. Yeah, I guess on Tuesdays and Thursdays, one of the ways that those of us who are gathering for this moment, one of the ways we're marking the transition between morning and noon is coming together with this, I guess, series that I started way back before Passover, before we even started counting the Omer, which now we're on day 40 today, of reading columns from my long ago column that I wrote for the Jewish Federation website that I called From the Left Wing. And in this time of quarantine and sort of, being isolated from one another, at least in terms of person to person, hopefully you're not isolated and you feel connected to folks. But we can't be together in ways that we could before we all kind of sheltered because of the virus. So kind of thought about this column again. It's been 10 years and felt like maybe this was something I could put out into the internet world and the kind of CRC universe that's kind of plugged in and that's interested to hear. I have read all these again, and they really do stand up, more or less. I've had to do some addendums and caveats and things like that, but more or less it really does feel very true to how I still think and believe and behave and practice today. So this is number 9. I had to miss last Thursday a broadcast. Unfortunately, I had to officiate a funeral, which is that would be a column for today's world, to talk about the whole kind of issues around death and dying and mourning during this coronavirus moment in history. There's a lot to say about it, but I'm going to save that, I guess, for writing it up, and maybe I'll make a moment to kind of express that. But leave it to say, of course, condolences to the family, and of course that's where I had to be last Thursday at noon. But now I'm back, and it's Tuesday, so I'm going to prepare to read you another column from the Left Wing. And I'm going to first kind of go through real quickly what I mean by left wing, just to make sure everyone is together, at least my definition and the way I'm thinking. If you have a different understanding as I go through these sort of clarifying definitions, go ahead and shoot me a comment or an email later. But I'm referring by and large to left wing. In this column, I was referring to left wing as on a spiritual or religious spectrum, not a political spectrum. There's some, I guess, connections left and right when it comes to like really anything you talk about. It's generally a political term, but we also use it in the world of religion, left-wing religion and right-wing religion, and obviously everything in between on that spectrum. But when it comes to specifically talking about left and right with Judaism, and then in more general terms, religion and spirituality, I've sort of written down a few sort of flashpoints that help, I think, at least for folks to understand what I'm referring to when I say that I am writing about the left wing, my tendency to be as pretty close to the left end of the spectrum when it comes to how I do religion and think about religion and talk about religion. So, as I've said before, I guess it's sort of a regular feature of this broadcast. When it comes to religious and Jewish traditions, on the left wing, there's a flexibility, a great flexibility, and greater as you move to the left around traditions, whether you can change them or exclude some of them, or adopt new ones. There's a great flexibility as you move to the left end of the spectrum. And on the right end of the spectrum, there's much less flexibility. And when you get further to the right, there's hardly any flexibility at all in terms of changing traditions or dropping or adding traditions. That tradition is tradition on the right wing, not to be messed with. And then of course this flows from that in terms of change. Any change, is difficult, and religiously change is very difficult, because religion is something that is very comforting to people that care about it, and that's a part of their life, and so change is very jarring and disrupting. And then there's personalities. Some people are more open to change, and other people resist change, and there's nothing really right or wrong about either stance. But I guess one of the great things about this country and religion is we have pluralism. So if you're resistant to change, you might end up on the right end, a congregation that is more right wing. And if you're sort of more accepting and open to change, even desiring of change, you might find a community on the left wing, because of course there's a greater openness of change as you move further left, and a greater resistance to change as you move to the right. And then in part of religion, especially in the modern era, contemporary era too, is how do you interrelate with other religious traditions, and also organizations that are not religious, that are secular. And certainly there was a time in pre-modernity where that wasn't even much of an issue. Very few moments and places in history there was some relationships between different religions, but it was very difficult, and there was definitely you stuck with your own. But in modernity, that kind of busted open, and we started to live side by side, and go to school side by side, and work side by side with people who had very different religious backgrounds than we did. And so when it comes to dialogue and participation in programs with adherents of other traditions and religions, on the left, there's an openness to that idea, to that notion, that we ought to do cooperative programs and maybe even interfaith services, sharing space with people who have different religious backgrounds. And as you go to the right, there's it happens. Certainly, there are times where I think even on the right end, organizations and people find it important to join together with people of other faiths. It might be like a time of national crisis or something like that, or national celebration. But as you go to the right, there's less of an openness to that idea that there should be regular, whatever it's Bible study or dialogue with folks and communities of other religions. And then along with that, what do we do about teachings and spiritual practices that aren't ours, that are from other religions? Is it kosher, so to speak, to adopt, another religion's spiritual practice, and to talk about it, and to, speak of it as something that has value, and maybe something to think about, including it somehow within in our own religions. And of course, even more closed off to that would be on the right, and more open And again, as you get to the left, more and more open to that notion that there are teachings and practices and beliefs of value that other religions hold, that your way isn't the only, or even maybe not even the best way. There's a term, triumphalism, that many religions, and certainly on the right wing, hold that what we believe is the only way or the best way. And so that increases as you go to the right, and it lessens as you go to the left, that triumphalism. Also, I guess finally, when it comes to conversion and even just participation of others in our, or let's say in the Jewish case, the participation of non-Jews in services and Jewish programs, or even non-Jewish family members, how are they included in a congregation with their family if they're not themselves Jewish? What are the rules around conversion? And again, on the right wing, on the right end, there's kind of more of an exclusivity and guardedness about those issues. Who can participate, who can join, who can participate, and as you go to the left, more broad and inclusive definitions. So there you have it, left and right, in the way I think. And interestingly enough, this column that I chose to read today has a strong voice, very strong, from the right wing, because the column describes a email exchange that was shared between myself and a family member of mine who happens to be an Orthodox Jew, very I would say not all the way to the right, but definitely very right of center, and more than right of center, on the right end, getting there. Someone I love, and we have a wonderful relationship, and we have a lot of disagreements when it comes to religion and Judaism. And he wrote me an email, and I responded, and that's why I call number 9, this column that I'm reading, a respectful but clarifying debate. A respectful but clarifying debate, because it's a little bit of a mini debate that we had through email. The subject of the email is actually, I kind of wrestled with whether to read this one today, because it has to do with the same broad topic as I read last Tuesday. Not that you're supposed to remember from episode to episode, but last Tuesday I talked about mostly the column was about marriage licenses when it came to same-gender marriage, and I related an experience I had in that column of going to Iowa, when Iowa was the closest state to Missouri that had legalized same-gender marriage. And the experience of we went over with a whole group of couples to get married in Iowa, and not only their religious ceremonies or their spiritual ceremonies, but also to get their license, their marriage license, because that was impossible in Missouri, and what that was like for those couples to get their marriage license, actual official marriage license, when it had been denied to them for obviously forever until that point. So this is also about same-gender marriage, and so I wasn't sure if I wanted to do 2 in a row, but I'm going to. The other ones kind of, I feel like I have a little bit of a calendar in my head when I want to read each column, and this one just seemed to, despite my misgivings, because I don't want this to be dominated by any one issue, because I was really trying to write about a lot of issues and experiences that tried to explain my left-wing religiosity, but I just couldn't get away from wanting to read it. So I'm going to read it, and I promise you the next bunch of, there are no more columns that I wrote about same-gender relationships or marriage, and on Thursday we'll have a whole nother topic, and I've got a little bit of an outline. I think I've got 2 more months of these, just about. So what does that take us into into the summer, into I guess all of June and most of July. So that's kind of interesting. So then I'll probably sign off and say it's a wrap. But for now, I'm going to read to you this column that I'm calling a respectful but clarifying debate. This is one of them actually that didn't have a title. I don't have access to how they appeared anymore on the Federation website. And so I have my e-files of when I wrote them, and some of them I included a headline or a title, and others I think the person I was working with at Federation chose headlines for them. So this one didn't have one. I mean, it had one when it appeared, but I don't know what it is, and so I read it, and I'm calling it a respectful but clarifying debate. And so here we go. My 10-year-old son writes a daily political blog. No kidding. Recently, he wrote an editorial in favor of same-gender marriage. An Orthodox relative of ours responded to him, and I, in turn, because my son is 10, I answered back. I thought it would be interesting to post these two messages, the message from my relative and my response, side by side, as I believe they highlight, in a civil and thoughtful and even loving way, some of the differences between traditional and liberal Jews, between the right wing and the left. So this is the email from my relative who's Orthodox and representing in this schema the right wing. I found your editorial very thought-provoking, especially the part about how you don't get how anyone could not support same-sex marriage. That provoked the following thoughts, and I thought I would share. I used to wonder if I had been born into a Canaanite family at the time of Avraham, would I have been an idol worshiper? Or, if I was born in 12th century France, would I have supported the Crusades? Or, if I was born into a certain Muslim family in Saudi Arabia in 1990, would I have supported the 9/11 attacks? I really don't know. It is certainly true that the times in which we live and culture in which we are raised have a tremendous impact on our thoughts and beliefs. If so, I wondered, can we really say someone else in another culture is wrong? For someone, based on their culture and beliefs, the 9/11 attacks were justified. Or likewise with the Crusades or idol worship or the Holocaust for that matter. No one ever thinks what they're doing is wrong. We all come up with rationalizations that show how what we want to do is really the right thing. So then how could we ever know what the right thing really is? I like to think of life as a computer program, and God is the programmer. He designed the whole thing and knows how it is supposed to run optimally. Luckily, he foresaw this ethical conundrum and sent us instructions as to how to lead a moral and ethical life. This is the Torah. There may be laws of the Torah that at any given point in history may be viewed positively or negatively by a particular culture or people. This in no way, though, affects its validity. Though we should try with all our might, a creation can never hope to fully understand the mind of the Creator. Just because I don't understand why lobster is not kosher, or why I shouldn't wear wool and linen together, doesn't mean I should do those things, even if I really, really want to. It just means that God knows what's in my best interest even more than I do. He's the Creator, after all. I consider myself a thoughtful, kind-hearted person, and I do not support same-sex marriage. I feel no animosity towards anyone, even people who act against the Torah's instruction. As a famous Jew once said, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. I could never judge people negatively for the choices they make, as I would not want to be judged for the choices I have made. This does not mean in any way that there is no standard, that certain actions the Torah forbids. It just means that we are all human with tons of potential and frailties. Life is supposed to be ethically challenging, not ethically murky, where we don't know what the right thing to do is. Rather, we are supposed to grow into noble people by exercising our free will to make the moral choices. It was designed that way. You are a very thoughtful young man, talking to my son, and wonder a lot about our world. That is very good. I am a good many years older than you, and I still too wonder about lots of things. May you be blessed to continue to wonder and learn your whole life. And so this is my response to that really lovely, thoughtful email. Your response to Gabe's editorial was characteristically measured and thoughtful in tone. Gabe wrote that he didn't get why someone would be opposed to same-sex marriage. You wanted all of us to understand your opposition, which is not about mean-spiritedness or animosity, and I can attest to your self-description of being without those, but rather based on traditional Jewish law and what you believe to be God's moral standards. I do feel compelled, however, to respond to some of the content of your message that I find objectionable. Number 1, you seem to be comparing atrocious moments in history, such as the Crusades, the Holocaust, and 9/11, with gay marriage, as if mass murder, bigotry, and dehumanization were on par with a loving relationship of mutuality and respect between consenting adults. I would hope that most people, even those who think of homosexuality as immoral, would consider your examples to be quite extreme. Gays and lesbians were targeted victims of the Holocaust, and to even suggest that they are on par with the perpetrators is extremely disheartening. As a person with many friends in same-sex relationships, the idea that opponents of gay marriage imagine their principled stance to be similar to Germans who spoke out against the Nazis is very disturbing. Number 2, it is interesting to me that you suggest that opposition to same-sex marriage puts you courageously against the mainstream culture, which you see as filled with moral relativism. I hope you realize that I could make the opposite case. Last time I looked, gay marriage was illegal in most states. Last I looked, gay people are discriminated against, harassed, and despised by many, many Americans. It seems to me that supporting gay rights, gay marriage, supporting love, tolerance, and acceptance of God's creative diversity can also be considered to be standing up against the culture, which I see as often narrow-minded and cruel. In the battle to end slavery in America, some Jews used the Torah to justify keeping human beings in chains, while other Jews, outspoken abolitionists, looked beyond specific citations in scriptures to find the overall message of love and liberation. Looking back now, there is no question which group of Jews had the moral high ground. Thank you for the opportunity to think through these issues against a lovingly critical voice. Amazing what a 10-year-old child can inspire. So that was a lot. Brought back a lot of memories. I remember that exchange, and that relative and I are still very close. I think we pretty much would write the same emails today, to be honest with you. I don't think either of us has changed in our positioning. I will say one very important caveat for the benefit of my son: for as long as this video lives on the internet, he would want me to say. Back when he was 10 and writing his newsletter, he was writing editorials. Now he's 18, so I guess that was 8 years ago. So I wrote this column for 2 years. He does not write editorials, and he does not editorialize, and he very much prides himself in his newsletter and his podcast and all the various platforms he has as being, a very much non-biased, just the facts journalist, and trying really hard not to betray what his personal opinions are. And he has personal opinions, but he feels he really wants to present the news in a way that does not editorialize, that there are places you can go to find editorials, but not his platforms or his newsletter or his podcast. So I thought it was, as a dad, really important to make sure I said that. So this was, when he first started out, and he was experimenting with his voice and his brand, and he's landed in this purely objective place, or at least as objective as humanly possible. So said that for Gabe. I don't know. There's really, I think the column speaks for itself. My relatives, the way he thinks about same-sex relationships and the way I do, and I think it really does illustrate, probably more than any other column, because I don't bring right-wing voices into my From the Left Wing column, but I did in this time. So you really did hear someone who proudly and kind of firmly is on the right wing of Judaism, and then me, who is proudly and firmly on the left wing of Judaism. So I hope that was helpful. Actually, I will be back, Thursday at noon. I have actually a little more humorous, I feel like, shorter column for Thursday about my taste in music. And I'll leave it at that, because it's it opens with one of my favorite stories of being a rabbi and having people be surprised by me, by kind of what they think about rabbis versus meeting up with a real life rabbi. And obviously all rabbis, we're all different and we're all individual human beings, but this is what's going to happen Thursday. So I think I'm going to sign off. I appreciate the comments. Thank you, Karen, for the comment that just popped up. I agree. I was hoping this would be a positive model of a real strong disagreement, but one that, we came out of love and respect. This relative and I, we've known each other now for a long time, and we come at Judaism from very different perspectives, obviously, but we also very much love being Jewish, and are knowledgeable about our Judaism, and so and we love each other. So it makes for a great dialogue, actually, because I can't go kind of off the wire, and neither can he, because, well, we don't want to, because of our relationship. And so we get to really sort of have to really be stringent about how we talk to each other, because we're almost opposite poles, and yet we know each other as human beings, beyond labels and beyond, even something as powerful force in our lives as our religion. So yeah, thank you. Maybe when this all ends, I'll figure out a way to put all these columns on the CRC website, so that even after I'm done broadcasting them, anyone that wants to can kind of go back and refer to them, because like I said, the column has long been, all the columns that the rabbis wrote have long been taken down, off the Federation website. It was sort of a 2, 3, 4 year kind of adventure, and now they're on to other things, I suppose. But so I think I can make those available maybe in the fall as part of our website. Thank you, Don. Miss you too. Been mentioning your name at services, remembering your father. So let's keep staying connected as best we can. Know that I am thinking about you and loving you, and really looking forward to the time where we can all kind of gather together. Those of us that are local, if you're far away, which is one of the benefits of internet sort of activity. Hope, and we've never met, I hope to meet with you in person one of these days. And as I've been trying to say in the words of Bono and U2, I am spending a lot of my time in quarantine just trying to throw my arms around the world, the whole world, because there's a lot to think about, a lot to pray about. There's a lot of disappointment and suffering and fear and anxiety. There's also, I know, good moments and happiness and sweetness, but I'm just wanting to hold everybody through this crisis and through this really difficult time in our history. So throwing my arms around the world. For those of you who want to tune in for more Left Wing, I'll see you Thursday at noon, and have a great rest of your day.